How's it going, guys? I hope you guys having a great week. So I'm back today with another video. This one basically is the first in a multi-part series where I'm going to weigh in and basically review the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. For those who know me, I am a massive Mass Effect fan. Like, it is my favorite video game franchise of all time. So when the Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out, I was super excited to see all of the improvements and changes made into the original trilogy. Now, I know for many seasoned players, they will be wondering, is it worth actually diving in? Are the changes significant enough for people to fork out the $60 price point for the game? And many newcomers to the series will be wondering, is this the ultimate version? Is it the best version for me to play the Mass Effect trilogy? Why buy the Legendary Edition when I can get the original trilogy for a lot cheaper price on PC and both console? Well, my answer to both of those is a resounding yes. For seasoned players of Mass Effect, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition does make some pretty huge improvements and changes. Now, what I'm going to do for this series is I don't have time to write a script because there's a lot of content that I'm wanting to get out to you guys, and also I don't want to wait until I complete all 3 games before bringing out my reviews and impressions on it. So this review is a little bit different to my usual way. It's called a review in progress. So what I'm basically going to do is, after completing every part of the trilogy, I'm going to release a video where I basically give my thoughts and impressions on that game. So this video will focus exclusively on Mass Effect, the first game in the trilogy. And to be fair, the original Mass Effect came out back in 2007. So it's a pretty old game. It was definitely due for an overhaul, and it probably has seen some of the biggest improvements in the trilogy. The changes to Mass Effect are fab, and I've really enjoyed my experience with it. For those who haven't seen, I've been live streaming it with the community pretty much regularly since it came out, and I've been having an utter blast with it. I finished it about a week ago and did most of the side content, bar the odd little no mission kind of thing, but I played about 32 hours. It took me that long to beat it, and I'm absolutely loving it. For newcomers to the series, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition really is the ultimate way to play the original trilogy. If you haven't played the original trilogy, then I cannot recommend this series enough. Not only for the incredible writing and characters and the story, which is incredible, and the world building and the lore, which is amazing, but now thanks to all the graphical improvements and also a lot of the gameplay enhancements and improvements in Mass Effect, this really is the ultimate way to play the trilogy. And especially because for the $60, it does include the 3 games in the trilogy, Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3, as well as 40 DLC packets. So some of those are quite extensive story-based DLC, but you also do get additions of weapons and armor sets and different DLC content. It is a huge value for money. I think it's an incredible value for money, even for seasoned players of the original trilogy. Having played Mass Effect 1, the improvements that have been introduced do really make this game feel different. It feels familiar but new at the same time, and I've really enjoyed it. So let's start off by talking about some of the improvements in Mass Effect and what my general thoughts are on them. So one of the biggest enhancements in the Legendary Edition is obviously the graphical improvements introduced. For the first time, you can play the trilogy in beautiful 4K resolution with improved textures and lighting, and I have to say the original Mass Effect looks absolutely gorgeous in the Legendary Edition. The character textures, the character enhancements are absolutely fantastic. I've never seen Caden looking better. Ashley looks great. Even the fine details, you know, with Rex and Garrus and Liara, they all look absolutely brilliant. The levels and the environments look great too. I will say that the main story-based, you know, levels and missions, like for example Eden Prime, Noveria, Vermeer, they have seen the most significant improvements in terms of textures and levels, but generally overall the game looks really, really beautiful. What I will say though is the development team really do like their lens flare a little bit too much, and it is used quite a lot throughout the game. But the introduction of a photo mode is perfect, given all of the, you know, enhancements and the visuals. It's a really, really beautiful looking game. I've been playing it on PC at 4K and it looks absolutely gorgeous. And I hear great things on the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One and Xbox Series X as well. One of the other biggest improvements as well in Mass Effect was the character customization. So obviously in the original trilogy, you had 3, you know, separate customizations, and it was really difficult to create an identical character across all 3 parts of the trilogy, even with a character that you had imported. Because of the different textures and different options available, these characters just looked really, really different from game to game. Well, finally, BioWare have introduced a streamlined character customization across all 3 games, and it's fab. It's really, really good. You can finally make really, really attractive, good looking male shepherds and female shepherds in the original Mass Effect. Girls now have 20 different hairstyles. There's more varied hairstyles, hair colors, and customizable options. Boys as well, I think they get like 22 hairstyles and different things. So there's a lot of improvements, and that makes me very, very happy as a huge RPG fan, because obviously character customization is really key for me, especially if I'm going to be seeing my character in cutscenes throughout the game. I have to be happy with the way that my character looks, and I have been known to restart games multiple times until I am happy with that. And I'm really pleased that I was able to make a really good looking red-headed, green-eyed female shepherd, and I love her. Also, what I like as well is when I started Mass Effect 2, the transition of moving her into Mass Effect 2 was really, really simple. You just imported your character from ME1 and she looked identical. She looked exactly the way that I made her in Mass Effect 1, with obviously minus the scar for, you know, story reasons. But yeah, the character customization is massively, massively improved. One of the biggest improvements, however, though, in the original Mass Effect is the actual minute-to-minute gameplay and the actual minute-to-minute gunplay. Mass Effect has always been known as a series with great storytelling, great characters, great world building, and the original Mass Effect was definitely that. It's one of the things that pulls most people in. But the original gameplay for, you know, Mass Effect that came out back in 2007 was pretty painful to play and quite difficult to control. Even if you were a soldier that specialized in all of the different weapon types, the gunplay still felt incredibly clunky. The use of powers still felt incredibly difficult, and this was one of the biggest areas that needed improving in the Legendary Edition, and BioWare have done a fantastic job. The gunplay in Mass Effect 1 is fabulous. It's a lot more responsive. The damage that you do to enemies actually now falls in line with your skill and how good you are at using those weapons. In the original Mass Effect, the gunplay and the damage done to enemies really followed more kind of a random dice roll, kind of like what you had in, say, Dungeons and Dragons. You'd roll a dice and it would be random how much damage you would actually do to that enemy. So as a result of that, you never really felt in control when it came to the combat, and it could be quite frustrating. Well, the reticle is much better. The damage that you do does actually correlate to where you hit that enemy. So if you shoot them in the head, you will do increased damage. You actually get to see that fed back to you. And and the guns feel great. They feel really responsive, really different, and just incredibly satisfying. You can finally use snipers with a lot more accuracy. You don't have the god-awful sway that we had in the original Mass Effect, and that just makes it a lot of fun. Particularly using snipers is a lot of fun, and it does give you a lot more flexibility when it comes to using different weapons for different classes, because you do have access to all the weapons in the Legendary Edition for every class, and that means, you know, you could play a Vanguard with a sniper if you wanted to. You really do have those options. The only advantage to the soldier class generally is that you can actually specialize in all of the weapons, which gives you access to special ability for that weapon. So definitely gunplay and weapons is heavily improved. I will say that grenades are still god awful. The use of grenades, they're more like hockey pucks than anything else, and I find them incredibly difficult to use. It's very hard to judge how far they're gonna throw. You kind of whiz them out there a bit like a frisbee, and you have to kind of press the button again to detonate them, you know, when they're near to the enemy. So they can be very tricky to get to grips with. So I tended to veer away from using grenades and mostly focused on my weapons. Because the gunplay is massively improved though, one of the things I would have liked to have seen introduced was just improved AI for both enemy AI and also squad mate AI. And I have to say, having played it, it doesn't feel that BioWare have massively tweaked the AI. I actually found the difficulty for the gameplay actually really easy as a result of just the improved ability to kill enemies. In fact, I found it too easy. I started off at normal difficulty, was mowing through everybody. The gunplay and combat just felt less fun and less challenging because I was just killing everything so easily, sometimes with one shot, you know, from an assault rifle, which really shouldn't be possible. But yeah, so I ended up increasing the difficulty to veteran, and then that became too easy as I got more powerful gear and leveled up. So eventually I actually, you know, started playing on insanity, and that gave me a pretty good balance of challenge. But yeah, I think the difficulty level definitely needs tweaking and balancing because it did feel too easy. That could just be because I'm a little bit more of a seasoned player when it comes to Mass Effect, so I know all the different combos and abilities and when to use overload, when to use warp or lift or throw, and maybe that gave me a bit of an advantage. So maybe it's a decent enough level for beginners coming into the series and it's not overly difficult. But yeah, for a seasoned player, I definitely recommend playing it at the higher level difficulties. You probably will enjoy it a lot more as a result of it. Certainly with your AI squad mates as well, I would recommend that you don't allow them to use all their abilities. Actually either keep them on defensive in terms of just using their defensive moves, or just turn their ability to use their moves off, and actually you give instructions to your squad mates when to use particular abilities, what covers to get behind, especially in Insanity, because they will tend to do silly things and get themselves, you know, killed in different situations as you are increasing the difficulty. So yeah, definitely squad mate AI in the original Mass Effect is still not great. It is something that could have been tweaked and improved even further. One of the other biggest improvements in Mass Effect is the improvements to do with the Mako. So the Mako's always been quite controversial as a vehicle. Finally, BioWare have made it a lot more viable. The turret and improved aiming down a reticle for enemies is so much better. It makes combat, vehicular combat, much easier and more fun to use, and the inclusion of a boost is a real game changer because it does make planet exploration a lot more fun. These planets are pretty much the same. Nothing's been massively tweaked with them other than making them a little bit more visually beautiful, but they're pretty much the same, you know, in terms of exploring for different resources and minerals on that planet, different collectibles, and then obviously there are certain side missions that you can go to these planets for. So the ability to traverse around them a lot quicker is definitely a huge improvement. What I will say is the terrain is still pretty awful. The Mako itself itself does control better, but the vehicle still feels a little too light and ragdoll in nature for my liking. And I'm not sure necessarily that's down to the Mako. It may well be down to the terrain. Nothing's been improved with the terrain, so there are still points on the map that are up, sheer cliffs that you have to get up, and that can be a little bit difficult to maneuver. So as a result, you do still have the crazy ability for the Mako to kind of roll down hills and do 90-degree drops and turns and things like that. So it still feels quite faithful to the original in that way. It's not to say I didn't enjoy the planetary exploration. I did enjoy it, but again, it isn't the main pull for me in the original Mass Effect. Let's talk a little bit about the menu, maps, navigation, and leveling. These have all stayed pretty much the same. They haven't really changed. The menus, the maps, they're all the same. That's very nostalgic for those people that have played the original trilogy like myself. And leveling and abilities still work pretty much the same. The only difference that they have introduced in the Legendary Edition is a legendary leveling system which actually reduces the max cap level to 30 instead of level 60. But you can actually use the more traditional basic one, which will allow you to level up to level 60, but it doesn't really massively change anything. It just gives you less levels, but you incur points more rapidly, and you level in exactly the same way. So you put points into talents, and as you spend points into each of these talents, this will unlock particular abilities in lower down trees. So it works exactly the same. So if you have watched my combat guides, they are still very much relevant to the original Mass Effect, which makes me happy because obviously I put a lot of time and effort into them. So it's great that they're still relevant to the Legendary Edition and obviously the way in which you play. In terms of inventory management, there have been some very minor improvements, mostly to do with the ability to dismantle and sort multiple items, which does make it easier to find items to sell and dismantle. But generally speaking, it's pretty much the same. It's still quite clunky. You still are attaching mods and upgrades, and but you know what? It's not terrible, and I do really enjoy the original armor sets and the different weapons and things that you can find, because it does work well with the exploration, and it does encourage you to do these side missions and explore different areas and planets, because there are rewards for that. So I don't have any major problems with the kind of customization involved in the original Mass Effect. I actually quite enjoyed it. In terms of performance, I played the game on PC, and it was incredibly stable. On PC, you can actually uncap the game to 240 frames per second if you have a powerful enough PC. I was playing it on 4K resolution with all of the bells and whistles, and the frame rates were pretty consistent on PC, roughly at about 120 frame rates per second for the gameplay and the combat, and then the cutscenes were rendered at a stable 60 frames per second. So in terms of that, the gameplay is very, very smooth. I did have the odd minor bug in terms of visual bugs where certain squad mates' weapons just mysteriously disappeared and were not showing in cutscenes. There was the odd bug as well where Shepard would get locked with her weapon in terms of a certain angle or view, which made it very difficult to shoot. But thankfully, after moving around and using an ability, you were able to kind of get back to normal. So these weren't major game-breaking bugs, thankfully. I didn't need to, reload into any games or anything like that. They were just minor things that did pull you out of the moment now and again, and were kind of amusing to see, but they were only very minor. They didn't happen consistently, just at odd points in the game. But generally speaking, overall the game was very smooth and really, really enjoyable. For me, the first game, Mass Effect, has received the biggest improvement, and combine that with the incredible storytelling and the incredible world building and everything on offer here. I was in absolute heaven, and I really, really enjoyed playing the first Mass Effect. And honestly speaking, I can't recommend it enough. If you have played the original Mass Effect, if you have played the original trilogy, this is the ultimate way to play it, to go back in and jump back in. And because of all the gameplay enhancements and improvements, it does leave the game feeling fresh and new for seasoned players. And then if you're thinking about jumping in and you've never played the trilogy, you didn't get to play it originally when it came back out, you know, 10 plus years ago, then totally pick up the Legendary Edition. It is worth it. In my opinion, I actually think it's worth the full price of, you know, 50 to 60 pound, particularly given the fact that this incorporates all 3 games plus 40 DLC. I think it's great value for money. But so far, I'm really, really enjoying it. The first Mass Effect, mwah, fabulous. Absolutely loved it. And I can't wait to carry on playing more of Mass Effect 2. Definitely jump in and say hi. Tune in for some of my live streams. I'm going to try and stream more consistently now with the Mass Effect trilogy. So I'm hoping I can stream on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday going forward. But we'll see how that goes, and I will still be uploading my full playthrough of the trilogy on the channel as well. Once I finish Mass Effect 2, I will be doing another one of these videos just talking about the improvements with Mass Effect 2 and what I thought of those, and you know, how significant the changes are for those that are interested. So please look forward to that. If you have played the original Mass Effect, then please let me know your thoughts of it. If you've played part 1 of the Legendary Edition, let me know your thoughts on all the improvements. If there's anything that you feel I've missed on here that I should talk about, then please let me know as well. I'm not going to give it a score just yet. I probably will wait for the final video where I will give a total score. So a score for all the individual games and then a total score at the end of it. But yeah, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, guys, very much worth the wait. And it's great. You know, BioWare have really gone above board on this. This isn't just a cheap, you know, remaster where it's just minor graphical improvements. They have actually gone in and made some significant quality of life improvements as well. And it's just really great to see. So yeah, hope you guys having a great week. Of course, you know, let me know your thoughts. Take care, everybody. And as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys. Kate approves. Kate approves. Oh my God, Kate totally approves.